Good morning to one and all. In the previous class, we discussed about properties of a aggregate. Normally, aggregates are used for the construction purpose of different types of roads. Different types of roads means normally we are having expressways, national highways, major district roads, and other district roads and village roads. So that every road having different design speeds. If you lay a mud road, that means మనం ఒక మట్టి రోడ్డు మీద 120 కిలోమీటర్ స్పీడ్స్తో మనం ఒక వెహికల్ని ట్రావెల్ చేయలేము. వై బికాస్ టు ట్రావెల్ ఎట్ దో స్పీడ్స్ ఆఫ్ 120 kilometers, the tires require some quantity of friction and some amount of desirable properties, so that what we need to have to maintain those amounts of speeds and those kinds of evenness and those kind of angles to the pavements, so that we need to take care while we are designing different kinds of roads according to their speed limits. We have to follow some quantity of properties according to the designs of the roads. First of all, we need to know desirable properties required for the aggregates. First of all, the aggregates will have a clean and free from the clay and organic matter. That means there is no impurities in the aggregates. If it is a impurity, automatically there may be no proper bond between particle to particle. Next one is the strength properties. The aggregates will have to bear a huge quantity of strength whenever the vehicle moves on the roads, so that the aggregate will have to possess some stresses when the load is moving on the roads. That means if there is a free stress distribution in the aggregates, automatically there will give huge amount of strength to the road. The strength is obtained, automatically the road will have to we go for huge lifespan. The aggregate strength is very low means the roads will have to lay for every successive 2 to 3 years. If the strength is very high means automatically the road will have to lay for 5 to 10 years of design period. Next one, hardness. Hardness means the vehicle will have to move on the road means definitely the road will possess hardness, otherwise there is no proper movement. The vehicle will have to move in a irregular or zigzag pattern if there is no hardness to the road. Why? Because there is hardness, automatically there may be friction to the tire. If there is no proper hardness, uneven friction, due to this uneven friction the vehicles will not stand on the road. Normally we are that means we are just keeping on the road, that means parking our vehicles on the road surfaces. If there is no proper friction to the road, automatically our vehicle will slips due to improper hardness on the road. In some of the cases our vehicles will simply flowing to the steepness. Why? Because there is no proper hardness to the tire and pavement. Automatically we have to keep some quantity of stones in the tire sides of the tires. Why? Because there is no proper hardness to the tire, that means road. Due to those reasons we have to keep some quantity of hardness to the material and top surface of the road. Next one, toughness. This toughness means it is a one quantity of index. Normally it is measured in terms of toughness factor, so that each quantity of aggregate have to possess some toughness factors. Next one is the shape and sizes. Shape means normally when we choose a particular quantity of aggregate, it must be in a angular shapes, not in rounded shapes. That means if there is angular shape, automatically friction will be there between aggregate to aggregate. Automatically we will possess huge strength. Next one, adhesion with bitumen. Adhesion means normally when we combining two quantity of different materials, automatically those different materials will have to bind together with proper adhesion properties. Normally this adhesion we will observe when we are meeting, that means when we are pouring some quantity of oil on the glass of water, there may be no bond between oil to water. Why? Because there is no two polar elements, that means two non-polar events, so that there is no proper bond. If we pour some that quantity of oil and the kerosene or diesel, definitely they will combine each other. Why? Because those two are same quantity of events, that means those two are belong to same. Particularly while we are mixing the aggregate with bitumen, so that there may be some equal quantity of adhesion properties to the bitumen and aggregates. Next one, durability. Durability means the material will have to sustain the atmospheric conditions. Otherwise, there may be some cracks will be obtained, and pitting of materials will be obtained, all other things which will leads to damage the roads. Next one, non-absorptive. The materials will not be able to absorb percentage of water on the surface. If it is absorbed, means automatically shrinkage and permeability, all are those leads to lifespan decrement of the road. Next one, be resistant to abrasion and exposure of traffic. If there is a high quantity of traffic moving on the roads, automatically there may be some quantity of decrement with respect to erosion, so that the vehicle will have to resist against erosion, and will have to possess good quantity of abrasion against the exposure of the traffic. Next one, freedom from the deterioration particles. Means deteriorates particles means if we having a flexible pavements in summer seasons, we will observe some quantity of that means sticky pattern. Automatically when we are having a huge amount of temperature in the 12 to 3 p.m, we are having a huge amount of temperature will be on the road surfaces. Due to those temperatures, the total flexible pavements will be turning into liquid state, and when the vehicle is moving on those pavements, automatically the shape and texture will be destroyed by the movement of the vehicles. All those are comes under this freedom from the deteriorous particles. Why? Because here deteriorous particles are total sun rays. Those sun rays will be directly acting onto the surface. Due to temperature, the automatically cooling, that means melting of this bitumen takes place. We need to avoid those kind of melting of bitumen by simply possessing additives like this fly ash content and other absorptive content, so that those materials will give sustainability against those conditions, environmental conditions. Next one, chemical properties of aggregates. What are the chemical properties? Normally for every matter in the in the world or in the earth, there may be some quantity of chemical properties. If you take a chalk piece, it having some quantity of chemical properties with calcium content and silica content and other dust contents. If you take a wood particles also we are having some quantity of chemical content, that means some resins are there in the wood. Likely if there is a steel, automatically there may be some ferrous content and some nickel content, chromium content. Likely in our environment, every matter having some quantity of these chemical properties. If you take a glass, the glass having some silica matter up to 190 to 10%. After that we are having oxygen content, some additives to improve the strength properties of the glass. Likely in the road structures also we are having different materials we are using for the construction purpose, so that they are having different properties. Those things also we need to observe. Important for bituminous and cement concrete mixes. Why? Because those are very much useful in the construction of the road. If there is any delay or decay materials present in those mixtures, automatically those will lead to huge amount of material loss and manpower loss, and they may cause huge quantity of accidents and traffic delays. So that we need to arrest and avoid those kind of situations simply by observing chemical properties of a matter whenever we are going for construction of roads. Next one, surface chemistry decides how well bitumen adheres to aggregate. Surface chemistry means when we touch the particular quantity of bitumen, automatically our touching will give some quantity of knowledge to our mindset. Why? Because if it is a very hard, it is a very smooth, it is a sticky, those things we have to observe simply by touching a quantity of aggregates. Likely the surface also having some quantity of chemical phenomena. Whenever we are passing some quantities of rays on the surface of a road, they will give some readings, so that the surface chemistry will give us a quantity of things we have to know and we need to observe. Surface chemistry decides how well the bitumen adheres the aggregate. That means what is the bond between aggregate to this bitumen? Is it is a destructive bond or constructive bond? Destructive means whenever the load is moving, automatically there may be destructive means bond to bond breakage will be appears. Constructive means they will stick together and gives huge amount of compressive properties. Likely we have to observe by using the surface chemistry properties. Next one, poor adhesion results in stripping causes the failure of pavements. Poor adhesion, that means poor means very very low properties. Adhesion means normally sticking property with surrounding aggregate property, that means aggregate material. Whenever the matter having a poor properties, automatically it will takes stripping. Stripping means layout, that means there may be bond breaking to particle, it is called as a stripping. Normally we will observe skidding, that means there is no proper friction between tire and pavement. In those cases we will observe skidding of our vehicles. Likely stripping means there may be no proper bond between particle to particle, automatically those will leads to stripping. Due to the stripping also, we have to observe some quantity of cracks developing in the surface of the pavements. Why? Because due to lack of these adhesion properties. Due to those cracks, automatically if there is a crack means automatically the water will enter into the road surface, and other different chemicals coming from the vehicles and other things will be going on to the road surfaces. To all those things leads to destruction of the roads. So that we have to take care while we constructing a road with a proper quantity of materials. Next one, in PCC pavements, that means plain cement concrete. You need to observe PCC means plain cement concrete. RCC means reinforced cement concrete. If we are using a particular quantity of steel in the concrete mix, it is called as a RCC. Normally we are not using any quantity of RCC steel in the matter, means it is comes under plain cement concrete. Plain means without any additives, only concrete is there, cement concrete is there. If reactive silica is present in aggregates, that means reactive silica means silica normally we will observe in sandy particles, means sands we have to observe the silica content. Whenever we are going to these glass industries, they simply use the silica content for the production of glasswares, that means glassy materials. After the production is way over, they will get some quantity of waste in the form of this reactive silica and other things. So that those reactive silica we have to use as a additive materials to give extra strength to the pavements or any other concrete materials. We will use as a replacement of fine aggregate. In some places we have to use as a coarse aggregate also, according to the particle sizes. It reacts expansively with cement paste and causing expansion, which will lead to cracking and other types of failures. That means whenever we are using this reactive silica in the concrete mixes, it will lead to expansion of cement paste. Expansion means normally expansion means increment of its area. Why? Because some of the chemical having expansive nature. Due to those expansive nature, automatically if we keep a centimeter square of area, automatically they will lead to 1.1 centimeter square or 1.2 centimeter square due to those chemical properties. So that we have better to understand whenever we have to pay a particular quantity of road, it will we need to do some tests on the aggregates and these binding materials in the laboratories, like elongation test and penetration tests and surface penetration tests and water absorption tests. All those things we have to observe in the laboratories. Otherwise simply we are constructing on the pavements, means for constructing a normal road it is okay. If you are constructing a national highways or expressways, those will lead to a huge quantity of damage to our structures like roads and our vehicles. For that, but it is better to possess some quantity of experiments on the constructed materials like the aggregates and bitumens or cement materials, causing expansion which will lead to cracking and other types of failures. In a different roads, we are observing different quantities of failures due to external parameters and internal parameters. In those particular failure conditions, what are the external parameter means all those things which will act on exterior parts of the road, those are comes under external parameters. Wind is acting on the road on exterior direction, that means external part, and water external part, and vehicles are moving on the exterior of the road, it is also external causes. And what are the internal causes means there may be lack of bonding between particle to particle, those leads to failure. That is the internal phenomena. Likely we have to categorize different things acting on the pavement surfaces, and we need to evolve those things, and we have to identify, and we need to repair those things in a successive times. Otherwise those will lead to active cracks and passive cracks are there. Active means automatically if a small crack is developed on the road, those will lead to a long crack simply by passing. Whenever the vehicle load is applied on the crack, automatically it will elongates day by day. It will leads to a huge amount of lengthy cracks. So that we need to arrest those kind of cracks when we observe on the road surface. Next one is stripping of aggregates. What is stripping? As previously we discussed, if there is no proper bond, if there is no proper friction between the aggregate to aggregate, automatically this stripping takes place between aggregate molecules or aggregate particles. One of the main failure modes of the bitumen pavements. Why? Because in the bitumen we are using this tar or bitumen as a binding material. If suppose if we will not mix properly, automatically there is no proper bond between the elements, that means particle to particle, those leads to this stripping. Next one is due to loss of adhesion. Why? Because loss of adhesion means the BT roads having some quantity of liquid properties. Why? Because normally after the hardening is over, in summer seasons the bitumen will have to go for normal liquid properties. Why? Because due to huge amount of temperatures, due to this variation of temperature, in the morning time we are having huge quantity of temperatures, after that evening time we are having very less temperatures in some areas. Not in all the countries we are having same features. In some areas we are having these random changes in the temperatures. Due to those conditions also, these roads will have to go for different losses in adhesion. Why? Because in the morning time we are facing this huge amount of temperature, as well as in the evening time we are facing huge low quantity temperatures in degrees, that means of 10 to 15 degrees. Likely due to this rapid changing, those also leads to unreactive, so that there may be some quantity of loss of adhesion between particles. Next one, water affinity. Water affinity means when we add some quantity of water onto the structure, automatically up to some water content it will be possess good strength. After that huge amount of water is there, automatically the strength will be reduces. Why? Because in rigid pavements we have to observe these kind of quantities. Why? Because the rigid pavement we have to construct with the help of cement as a binding materials. If you add some quantity of water to the cement, it will give a good strength in the compressive, that means good strength in the purpose of compressive strength. If you beyond adding a water content means automatically the total binding material will be loosened, and there may be giving some less quantity of strength due to huge quantity of water content present in the soil, that means binding matter. So that we need to choose a water affinity. On other hand, we have to use a curing purpose. Whenever the road is constructed, after the construction of the road, we need to cure the road surface for a few days. That means normally we will have to cure for 28 days to obtain a good compressive strength. Normal curing they are following is a gunny bag curing, and in some of the places they directly pour some quantity of water and simply they make some cement paste at the middle points. They will pour water onto the land. They will give directly penetration of the water and formation of calcium silicohydrate gel. Those gel will lead to give good quantity of the strength. In some of the cases they simply using some bore waters and salt waters. In those cases, due to the attack of this salt water also, there may be some quantity of bond breaking. Why? Because salt water having some quantity of sodium, potassium and other sulfuric salts, that means acids also there. Due to those also there may be less strength formation between the aggregate and cement, that means binding content. Due to those also we are having water affinity, hydrophilic and hydrophobic both. What is alkali aggregate reaction? Alkali means which is acidic nature. Aggregate means normally aggregates we are using for the construction purpose for getting good quantity of compressive strength. In case of alkali aggregate reaction, this is mainly due to, this is main mode of failure. Why? Because in the particular quantity we are having alkali aggregate reactions. This is the main mode of failure. Why? Because alkali aggregate reaction, alkali means normally an acidic nature. Aggregates are normally having some quantity of compressive strength they will have to give. If there is no proper bond between this cementitious content, that means binding content and aggregate content, automatically this leads to alkali aggregate reaction. Mainly the main reason for this alkali aggregate reaction is when we choose a poor quantity of, that means poor quality of materials, it will leads to also alkali aggregate reaction. Why? Because in some of the cases they are using a different quantities of water with salt content. Due to the salt content also it leads to alkali aggregate reactions. In the initial stages of the construction it will gives a good strength. After a 1 or 2 years is over, automatically some retting will be takes place and cracks will be observed. A small particles will be breaks. Those leads to this alkali reaction. Those is due to this alkali aggregate reactions. Next one is a chemical reaction between aggregates and hydroxy ions in associated with alkali in the cement. Chemical reaction. What is chemical reaction? Means in the cement we are having some calcium, after that aluminum and silica. Those three are the major contents present in the cement. In those also they have some specific chemical formulas and reactions. When we use different quantities of aggregates with impurities, due to those impurities also these chemical reactions will differ. Due to those differentiation in the chemical reactions, those will forms different hydroxyl ions associated with these alkalis present in the cement. Those also leads to this erupting takes place. Next one, concrete deformation is shown but is not progressive. That is, concrete deterioration is slow but progressive. Deterioration means I will give example. This is the normal a particular atom. Due to this deterioration, first of all the total atom will be divided into two particles. After another deterioration will takes place, the total will be divided into four. After that another deterioration likely. This is the total deterioration. That means a large size particle is completely dividing into a small particles. Those will leads to this due to this alkali aggregate reaction. This will gives directly decrement of particular volume. Next one, depending upon the type of minerals present in the matters, these reactions also results and decay varies. If there is a 10% of waste materials in the particular kg of a binding content, automatically those 10% needs to deterioration. if there is if the percentage variation is 20%, the deterioration will be takes place in less time. The percentage content is 30%. Within a short span of time, total deterioration will be takes place. So that the alkali aggregate reaction is majorly having effect on impurities percentage on the materials. If the impurity is in cement content, there may be less quantity of failure. Why? Because we are using more amount of aggregates and less quantity of cement for the binding purpose. If aggregates having huge amount of chemical nature, automatically those will leads to small scale, within the small scale of time the total deterioration takes place. Why? Because aggregates we are using in much quantity. Normally cement we are using is 1 m20, that means m20 we have to use automatically 1 is to 2 is to 4. The total quantity is 7. In those particular 7 parts, the total cement part is 1 part and fine aggregate part is 2 parts, coarse aggregate part is 4 parts. It is the cement part, fine aggregate part, coarse aggregate part. Totally we are having 7 parts. It is the mixed design for the particular M20 grade of concrete. Only 1% is 1 by 7 content of cement is there, 2 by 7 content of sand is there, 4 by 7 content of aggregate is there. So that if the percentage of alkalis in their cement means automatically there will be less quantity of deterioration. If the alkalis in the sand is there, automatically there may be some huge quantity. If the alkalis are present in the coarse aggregate, there may be definitely huge amount of deterioration will be takes place due to huge amount of presence of alkalis. This is the total reaction, that means total about alkali aggregate reactions. Next one, what are the physical properties of aggregates? Whenever we are using, we have to observe. Why? Because physical means physic is a term related to a body, so that physical properties also related to the body of a aggregate. In that particular body, what we have to observe means the length of the body, width of the body, and depth of the body and thickness. All those things we have to observe whenever we see a particular quantity of matter. So that in this particular physical properties, what we have to see, first of all, the gradation and size. What is meant by grade? In our studies, they will give a grading system to our marks. It means what amount of content we have to understand in our lectures, that will used by a grading system. If you wrote an exam for 100 marks, if you obtain 80 marks, automatically they will give 8 grades. If you obtain 9 marks, automatically they will give 9 grades. Likely what content you have to present, automatically for that content you will get a grade. In case of these aggregates, the gradation will be done according to their sizes. That means the size of a particles are how much amount. The all particles are having 40 mm, that is the one quantity of gradation. All particles having 20 mm, that is the another 20 mm gradation. Likely aggregates having different grades according to their size of the particles. For suppose if 40 grade aggregate is there, automatically in those 40 grade aggregate, all the particles have to each, but that means each aggregate will have to value of 40 mm size, whether it may be a length or width or thickness, whatever it may be, the total aggregate size must to have 40 mm. Likely different sizes we have 40 mm, after that we are having 20 mm, 10 mm, 4.75, 2.65, after that 1.16, after that 0.6, 0.3. Likely we are having different sizes of the particle according to these sieves. After this lecture is over, I will explain different tests conducting on the aggregates and their test procedures, how we have to do, and those values also I will explain. Next thing is the toughness and abrasion resistance. Toughness means abrasion. Both are coming to one test. That means toughness means normally when an aggregate is exposed to the atmosphere due to the movement of the vehicles, the aggregate will have to give some quantity of toughness. Otherwise, due to the huge amount of load variation in the road surface, it will have to break. And it sometimes it will be go for abrasion means some quantity of resistance against moving loads. Those will call it as the abrasion. The toughness and abrasion resistance also we need to take in the transportation engineering lab. All we are having these quantities of laboratory tests. According to the tests, we have to observe what is the toughness value, what is the abrasion resistance value. All those things we have to find out. A drum test is there. That means in a particular drum, we need to take some 4 to 5 kgs of aggregates. After that, a steel balls are placed on the drum. The steel balls having a 40 mm, that means 2-inch size balls will have to place on the drum. When we need to rotate those drum into up to 30 seconds, that means a 40 to 50 rotations will have to give. After 40 to 50 rotations is over, due to the impact of those steel balls, the material will breaks. So that we need to sieve after the breaking is over. Initially, what is the particle size we have taken. After the test is over, what is the particle size we will obtain. So that according to those particle sizes, we will give abrasion resistant to the aggregates. Next thing, we are having a durability and soundness. This durability is directly related to environmental factors. Why? Because the total aggregate will have to sustain in the environment against different conditions like rainy season, summer seasons, and winter seasons, and combinations of those in different areas. Why? Because in African countries, they are having huge amount of temperature up to 50 to 60 degrees, so that they will have some quantity of roads with different temperature levels. But in case of Iceland and other areas, they are totally having minus degrees of Celsius temperature, so that they will have to lay the roads in a separate manner, so that state to state and country to country there may be temperature variance. According to those durability properties also changes. We have to observe in what condition we have to construct the road, what is the purpose of construction, and temperature and average annual temperature we have to take. For those only we have to construct the roads. Particle shape and size and surface structure. That means particle shape, whether it is a rectangular shape or it is a square shape, it is an hexagonal shape. All those shapes we have to observe, or it is a conical shape. Why? Because different quarries having different kinds of aggregates. Why? Because in that particular quarry, the total crude material, that means base material, will be collected from one quantity of hilly areas. So that for particularly hilly areas, they are having some quantity of chemical properties. Due to those chemical properties also, there may be deviation in their sizes and shapes and textures. All those things we have to observe by different two tests we are having: elongation index and flakiness index. Elongation index and flakiness index, we have to observe this particle shape and surface structure. Next one is specific gravity. What is specific gravity means? First of all, we need to take a 300 grams of aggregate. For those 300 grams of aggregate, we have to weigh out their weight. That means W1 we will take. After that, 300 grams of aggregate will be taken into one jar. In those particular jar, we need to take empty weight as W1. After that, we need to go for water. That means the total jar will be filled with water. After that, some quantity of aggregate. And the total weights we have to take W1, W2, W3, W4. W1 is the empty weight of particular jar. W2 is the jar with aggregate. W3 is the jar with aggregate plus water. W4 is the jar with only water. Likely we need to take 4 quantities of weights. First one is the empty weight, second one is the aggregate, third one is the only water, fourth one is the water plus aggregate. Likely we have to observe 4 readings. From those 4 readings, W2 minus W1 by W2 minus W1 minus W3 minus W4 is the formula for calculation of specific gravity. Those specific gravity having no units. Why? Because simply we are dividing weight by weight. They will not having any units. Simply we will get the value in terms of fractions. That means 2.54, 2.32 likely we will get. The value will be lies between 2.3 to 2.6. Beyond 2.6 means there may be huge amount of voids. Next one, cleanliness. This cleanliness means while we are observing a particular aggregate, there may be no dust on the surface of the aggregate. If it is a dust means automatically there may be huge amount of is organic matter or inorganic matter, whatever it may be. Due to those, some quantity of erosion or any other decay of roads takes place. Next one is the gradation and size. In this particular first one is the gradation and size. How the grading of aggregates will be takes place. First of all, effect of gradation and size of bituminous mixes. First one is the workability. What is workability means how easily we need to do the work with the help of those aggregate. That is called as the workability. Normally we are using a different aggregates for mixing purpose while we are constructing a road. If the aggregates will give better mix, it means all the aggregates will have a linear mix, means the total materials will mix in a proper way without having any voids or lumps or any huge amount of water dropping, all those things. That means normally workability we will measure with the help of slump cone test in concrete technology lab. If the materials are giving better workability means we will get a better strength. If the workability is very poor means automatically there may be no bond between the proper bond between the particles to bind our material. So that when we have to observe, if we have to get better workability, it will leads to a better strength. The workability is very poor, the strength also very poor. Next one, layer thickness. We need to observe the layers of the particles and the thickness. What is the small amount of the layer, what is the large amount of layer? We need to observe those layers and we need to calculate the thickness values. Next one, thickness of lift and the stability, stiffness, resistance to deformation, fatigue strength, durability, permeability, surface texture and frictional resistance. All those are the different parameters. That means those parameters leads to grading of aggregates. First one is the workability. Normally workability we will use with some quantity of binding material. Second one is the layer thickness. It will simply measures with the help of a scale and others. Next one is the thickness of lift. Thickness of lift means normally if you pick a particular quantity of material, how much amount of material will we come within our hands. Why? Because some of the materials having huge amount of friction to surrounding particles. If you pick a material, automatically all those materials will comes. If sand we takes, automatically if we pick a quantity of material, automatically some quantity of materials will be loosens because there may be no friction between particle to particle. Likely thickness of lift also very important. Stability. Stability means if you take a particular quantity of materials, simply we need to pour on a particular quantity, a particular surface of the land. The presence of a conical shape is not. That means if you take a particular volume of materials, that means this is the total volume, and we need to dig in this particular matter. After that, the total water, and we need to remove the total, and after that, what is the shape obtained? It is a conical shape or flattened shape or straight shape. Those will be calculated by the stability. Next one is stiffness. This stiffness also having some quantity of importance. Why? Because all the material is very stiff, it will give a huge amount of strength. The stiffness is very low, it will give a reduced strength. Resistance to deformation, also very important. Deformation means change of its volume by application of external load. Fatigue strength, when we use a particular aggregate and we need to rub with our fingers, once again we have to bend with our fingers. Automatically, if the fatigue is high, they will not fail. If the fatigue is very low, automatically it will fail due to the action of our fingers. That is tested with the fatigue strength. Next one is the durability. Normally durability we will test with the help of some quantity of acids. In some cases we have to test with water. Next one, surface texture and frictional resistance. All those things we have to observe with some quantity of gauges, friction gauges, and some sandpapers we have to use. By using those conditions we have to give the surface texture and frictional resistance.